So the album I thought I was going to sit down here and talk about today was Freddie Gibbs and Madlib's Bandana, which is a wonderful hip-hop album that somehow improves on Pinata, their first album together, one of the best rap albums of the decade. This one, the beats are a little more concise, they're a little bit more downplayed, it's more of a canvas for Freddie Gibbs, one of the most versatile rappers in the world, to do his thing. However, when I sit down and I think about my favourite album of the year, I can't go any further than a very subjective choice, one that's very personal to me. It's by a band called Seer and their album Forgotten Paths. I say a band, it's a one-man project made by a guy from Andy called Scotland. From Scotland. Done well there, great start, putting my favourite album over. This album is a blend. Now these sound like two genres that don't generally go very well together. It's a blend of black metal and Celtic folk music. That sounds awful on paper. It sounds like it doesn't make any sense in the world, but it is the most Scottish album you can imagine without sounding like it was made by a little ginger-haired bald fellow up a hill in a cave playing a bagpipe. It absolutely soars. When you think of black metal generally, it's a very violent genre, very oppressive, very loud, very crushing. It doesn't usually elicit good feelings. It's the kind of music that makes you a real bummer at parties and other social events, particularly if you try and rant about it. But the thing that I love the most about this album is that as a Scotsman living in England who just kind of really misses home quite a lot, it reminds me of home. It reminds me of hills and valleys and other cliched stuff that doesn't mean a whole lot to anyone else in the room. But it's a really sentimental pick. Sorry, Rach, you are also Scottish. Yeah, I just can't see past it. It's a beautiful, soaring album that anyone who wants an underground metal record to listen to in 2019 should get on Bandcamp and buy.
I am a bit of like a music turtle. I kind of have my few bands that I kind of stick my head out, consume that music, and then go back into my shell. I keep meaning to look into Fever 333's new album. I believe that one's called Strength in Numbers, but the numbers has like 3 3s at the end of it, so it's very clever. Because I like them, but I haven't quite looked into that album yet. I'm terrible at getting around to these things. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to say an album that I didn't actually hear until this year because I got it for Christmas on CD, because I still love listening to CDs in my car because that's just me. And it's by Beartooth, and the album is Disease. Such a good album. It came out in September, so it's not, obviously I'm cheating a little bit, but I did only just hear that this year. It's so good. The title track, the track just called Disease, I think it's track number 2. It's so good, and the album just starts off so well, and it's just one of those albums where every single song is catchy, it makes me feel feelings, makes me feel really emo, and it's just fantastic. I really like it. I'd like to give a really quick shout out as well to what I assume is going to be the album of the year. It's coming out very soon. As of time of recording, it's coming out in like 10 days, and that's Slipknot's new album, which is going to be called We Are Not Your Kind. I believe, I don't know, I maybe got that wrong. I'm so terrible with names. And I'm going to attempt to remember, again, at time of recording. They've released 2 singles. One of them just came out last week, and it is bloody good. How good is it, Andy Murray?
It's pretty good.
Oh, pretty.
No, it's really good.
Andy Murray gave it 3 pretties, but I really like it. That's actually going to be the last track of the album, and it's so heavy, so it just kind of like bodes well for what the rest of the album's going to be like. But yeah, really looking forward to the new slippers coming out next week. Little slippers. I'm going to wear them on my feet and consume their heavy metal.
Well, I mean, the best album of this year is actually an EP, as it is Ashnikko's Hi, It's Me, which Josh will pop for because it's literally the best thing I've ever heard. It's 5 tracks, all of them are just angry, I hate my ex-boyfriend tracks, like I'm great. It's Angry Woman 101, and I just love it. I live for an angry woman just doing a thing and being disgusting and talking about a minge the whole time, and that is Ashnikko to a T, like 100%. All of her stuff is about eating puss, and I just love her, and I'm glad her EP has come out. But because that is not technically an album, my favourite album of this year is Angel Dust's Pretty Buff. And at first, I really didn't like it. I really wasn't here for it at first because it's such a deviation from their normal sound, which it's a combination of there's Turnstile, there's Trapped Under Ice, and then there is Angel Dust right in the middle between these three bands. I always talk about these three bands because I like them a lot, but yes, there we go. But it's Angel Dust in the middle, and they kind of do everything that the other ones can't, and they usually have like this like lo-fi, punky, hardcore, like having a fun time sort of heavier sort of sound, but it's still very upbeat and happy, and you can do a little dance to it and that sort of thing. Whereas Pretty Buff came out, and then it's a real deviation from what they normally do, where it's like acoustic and it's like jingly, jangly melodies, and it's just really nice, soft listening. So when I first heard it, I was like, nah, man, what's this? Nah. And just as the years gone on, I find it always coming back into my playlist and giving it a proper good listen. And like Bang My Drum, absolute tune. Light Blue, a tune. There's just so many different things on the album that come out that are a joy to listen to and are nice to listen to and don't have to be angry, and it's all about love and feeling nice, and it's celebrating loads of weird like rock and roll cliche like couplets and that sort of thing that are involved in the way that he's written the songs, and I just think it's a really nice album, and it's enjoyable in a way that a lot of the other music can be quite like aggressive and oppressive and all that sort of thing, whereas this is now a celebratory sort of track, and I really appreciate that, and I think it's a nice way for their music to have grown, because they've gotten progressively softer and softer and softer, and now are just like a bunch of soft boys doing nice things, and I just think it's a great album. I think it's a really good evolution of their sound. So yeah, Pretty Buff, Angel Dust, it is pretty buff.
So who is the best album of 2019?
It was really difficult, obviously, and I narrowed it down to two. Girlpool's What Chaos Is Imaginary, but I've gone with Martha's Love Keeps Kicking for sentimental reasons. It's their third album, and it continues their kind of brand of kind of sentimental, nostalgic, kind of power pop in a way. It's really hook heavy. You'll be singing these choruses forever. There is one on WrestleMania 7, I think it is. WrestleMania 7 or 8, the song is called. And it is just the most infectious hook of the entire album, and maybe of the entire year. But this one, in comparison to the other albums, is kind of darker. It kind of delves into the breakup of a relationship, and each member of the band takes turn kind of singing on these songs, and they all sort of seem to have a breakup story to tell that is kind of conveyed in a hopeful, sentimental way. Because I like music, especially rock music, that isn't sort of afraid to just be gushy and sentimental and hopeful and kind of break through the stigma of, oh, we've got to be authentic, we've got to be angsty, we've got to, kind of like talk about our feelings in a really mature way. I like things that are just sort of cut through that and then are hopeful and looking onto the other side, which I think this does, but it also brings a lot of new elements to the table that Martha haven't really kind of tackled before, with some really interesting vocal melodies. On my favorite song, Into This, which is all about it's about this relationship kind of going sour, because it's got this like really sobering line where it's my heart flutters then it sinks because you only want to kiss me when I've had a drink, which I just think is so perfect. It's about this kind of weird fractured relationship that kind of soars into this excellent chorus. I think they just do that really well. And for me personally, it's just because they're from a similar place where I'm from. They're from County Durham. And it's always really nice, not only on this album, but the other albums, to sort of hear an accent that's yours. Because I didn't realize until coming onto the internet that accents in general, like the diversity of dialect, is sort of something that isn't kind of championed. So I like hearing a band that sounds similar to me, like singing with glottal stops and singing with sort of a weird cadence and like just embracing it. And there is a song in this album that mashes the sort of downfall of a relationship with drinking Buckfast, and if that's not a match made in heaven, then I don't know what is. More songs that reference Buckfast, please, and other bands might have a chance of becoming my favourite album of the year.
It's such a loaded thing because there's so much that I want to celebrate. There's so many just things that came out this year that blew me away. I want to give a shout out to Devin Townsend's Empath album, which is literally just like plugging into his mind and just like, I mean, he's already one of the most experimental metal compositions or musicians and artists and stuff out there, but Empath is incredible if you like progressive, crazy stuff. Also love Bring Me the Horizon's new one, and everyone hated that. But I just love that Ollie's found something to dedicate himself to that isn't killing himself with drugs. And he seems to be putting out some of the best melodies, and just he's in a good place, and the band's in a good place, and I like that album. But for me, the thing that my absolute number one has to be Periphery's new one, Periphery 4, Hail Stan, which is, if it doesn't win the award for the best name of an album, just absolutely blew my face off. I was never a massive Periphery fan. I remember when they first dropped, and they were like known as like the new gent band because they were like jun jun with the whole heavy, heavy strings or whatever, and just it didn't click with me. I thought they were a bit gimmicky or whatever. Going back to Periphery 4 though, Spencer Sotelo vocals, he's my new favorite vocalist. or he's right up there with Miles Kennedy anyway. There are some incredible high notes. He's just an absolute powerhouse. Like, I have such a soft spot for vocalists that really feel like they're singing from the heart. Guys like Tim McElrath, or like I said, Miles Kennedy or whatever, that really believe the stuff that they're screaming about. And I know that the lyrics, the actual content of Periphery 4 apparently is actually way out there, and it's about a stoner fighting aliens, and it doesn't really matter. But the tracks that he lays down, the notes that he hits, the power in his voice is incredible, and the rest of the band are just playing their absolute asses off. I just think it's incredible. The opening track, a 60-minute song called Reptile, that's the whole thing about this stoner fighting some aliens. The chorus on the likes of Garden in the Bones, something called It's Only Smiles is like a really soft, almost pop-punky kind of song, something that they've never done before, which I think a lot of their fans were like, oh my god, what is this? But then you have the start of something like Crush, which has kind of got this like synthwavey kind of vibe, but it's just like pulse-pounding kind of drums, but with like a synthwave underpinning. But it's mainly because of Sotelo, that he's the dude that kind of blew me away. So yeah, it's just, as a body of work, as a band, they're just so powerful, but I think you can hinge all of it, or hook all of it onto Sotelo's performance, and he's something else. Like Spencer Sotelo and Periphery 4, just top to bottom, outstanding.
The best album in 2019, ladies and gentlemen, as confirmed by the Billboard 200 in America, I should point out, is Igor by Tyler, the Creator. Now, I should point out before I get into that, I want to give a couple of honourable mentions to this, because there's just too many good albums out at the minute. So the Black Keys have got a new album out, that's fantastic. James Blake had a new album out at the start of the year, that's fantastic. There's a nice thumbs up from my man Andy Murray. A band called The Japanese House had an album out. Josh Brown knows about that one. Fantastic. You can see what the general theme is here. They're all fantastic. But Igor is the best album out of those for me so far, because it is just absolutely mint. Like, from the moment it dropped, which was in May, I think this year, May, the sun has been shining since this album dropped. Josh Brown will also confirm this. Walks to Work have just become an absolute delight, because he kind of follows on in the same vein from his album from a little while back, which actually, funnily enough, was dropped when I started WhatCulture, his other album, which is called Flower Boy. And basically it sees him move away from his sort of original style of being very sort of shouty, confrontational, aggressive sort of music, and he's decided to go along with a lot more melodical. It's like music that's been arranged really well and produced really well. But the thing I really like the most about this album is that it's like a massive step forward for music, in terms of he's the first black solo artist to ever produce an album that came in #1, but he produced it and he arranged it, and he didn't have any help from anybody else. It wasn't like he had a team of people, it was just him. He wrote all the songs, he arranged all the music, produced the whole thing, which is just amazing. And the sort of narrative in the album is that technically he's been in the closet for quite some time, essentially. And on his last album, he came out of the closet a little bit and started to talk about his sexuality a bit. And on this album, he kind of continues to explore that. But like, I just think it's amazing that that's a kind of album that can go to #1 now in the charts, no problem. And that kind of shows how far we've come as a society in general. But like, the way that he's done it, in sort of stripping back this sort of aggressive style that he had and changing his whole like way that he approaches music, which I think is because he's good pals with Frank Ocean. And I'm not just here to talk about Frank Ocean all day, everybody, but he's the best. If you haven't already done Frank, go and do Frank. But yeah, not like that, don't be rude. But yeah, basically Tyler, Creator's Igor absolutely slaps. Earthquake was a big winner for me, one of the tracks from the album, really, really good. So many good tracks, so much stuff on there to listen to. And yeah, an album I could highly recommend for anybody who likes just being mint, I guess, yeah.
Well, the best album this year is the same as it was in 2015 when Carly Rae Jepsen released Emotion. It was the best album then, it was the best album in 2016, 2017, 2018, and still the best album in 2019. But the best album that's just come out this year, which I was told is the rule for this, is Billie Eilish's When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Because it's just the most like bizarrely out of nowhere, really originally, like groundbreakingly, differently, everybody's gonna copy it thing I've heard in years and years and years and years. Like I heard, like pretty much everybody heard Bad Guy. I was like, oh, that's all right. That's not bad. It's a bit of a bop to that. I was like, oh, it's Miserable Azalea Banks. I'd get on board with that. So I went and got the album, but it's all gothic-y, it's really bass heavy, it's anxious, it's skittish, it's as like grossly inconsistent as you're meant to be at like 17. And the fact that she is that age and writes all this stuff is just absolutely bizarre. Yeah, she's 17. She like co-writes it slightly with her brother, but it's all her. Like she was dropping songs on SoundCloud from like 14 and up, and they're all like consistently weird and just dark and horrible. And it's like everybody focuses on Bad Guy because it was the big hit off it, but like Bury a Friend is excellent. Zanny, I'm never sure you say that one. Should See Me in a Crown. Like it's all over the place, and it's just like it's so. I keep using the word different when I hear it, but it's like it kind of simultaneously owes everything and nothing to Lordi, and it's like kind of what you imagine Elon Musk thinks Grimes sounds like when she actually incorrectly doesn't. But it's just, I don't know, it really knocked me over because I was expecting it to be like something to listen to for a couple of months, but it's really like gets its hooks in you, and you're gonna see for ages and ages and ages so many like poor imitations of her cropping up because it's just, it looks like being such an easily replicatable formula, like, oh, be a zany girl, wear like really baggy tops and stuff, but it's just, there's gonna be so many bad imitations of it, and that's usually what makes a really good album. Either that or it's just me.